one of the things we want to do in the podcast is always present a situation so that listeners have an applicable way to solve problems or some different situations that they may be going through and that they can relate to. So we've been talking about human-centered engagement. We've been talking about all types of dynamics that go on in the workplace. But the question is, how do you, here's the situation. Imagine being in sales, for instance, and your bonus is tied to, or your extra bonus is tied to your workforce, right? And the person that can get you over the top, get you that extra, 15K, whatever, right? Whatever it is. I'll say 15K in this case, right? That was a
the
health club thing.
$dollar.
I said 15K because I go back to my health club. But you don't get along with them, right? And, traditionally it's like, what can I do to motivate him, right? So how do you resolve that situation? And I'll go...
Let's have Chris kick it off.
Yeah. How do you resolve that? You've been in sales for years, you've...
About 12, yeah.
Yeah. So what is it that you do to resolve a situation like that? Your bonus is tied to this person, you're leading them, and if they don't do it, then you don't get that bonus. So how do you resolve that?
I think if we look at our human-centered engagement touch points, the first thing I try and do is listen, right? Listen to the situation. Sometimes there was this instant where something shifted, right? Where you said something, they said something annoying was said, and then from that point, the relationship has just gotten sour. Once you listen, in that listening, you should be able to hear what that person's motivations are, right? Why are they here at work? Are they there for the money? Are they there to build friends? Are they there because they want to, open their own business at some point? And I think once you can really hear what that thing is, you can start to create a connection. Now, it doesn't mean a fake connection. Oh, great. Saw you like to do that. Now here's the job to do, right? No, it's like, let's really connect with them, right? And understand, oh, that's why we connect. Now I see your value, right? Now I see who you are, what you bring to the table. And that connection has allowed you as well to kind of see what I'm trying to do here as your manager, but also as your coworker. And I think from there, there's the trust that's built and you're able to challenge that person, but that takes time. That can take a year worth of time. That's not something that happens overnight, especially if the reason why it happened was something they really didn't like that you said or vice versa. So I think just really digging in, trying to understand, where the frame of reference is on both ends and trying to re-insulate that connection there and see each other's value.
Joe?
Yeah, so just one reaction to what Chris just said, and I loved everything about it. The only difference being with our process and flow for human-centered engagement, if you actually are authentically come to it, instead of a year, we can do that in an hour. We can do that and sometimes even in 10 minutes.
Workshop, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes even just in 10 minutes, we've practiced some things and we can create that connection in 10 minutes. So what then is possible, right? And so I'm thinking about the question, the situation, right? And there's a bunch of different factors, right? So as the solutionist, I'm also thinking about what are all the factors? What are all the parameters? What's, my analytical mind is like, what are all the different factors so that I can find that one path out that meets everything instead of just throwing, let's throw this at it or let's throw this at it. So those factors are important, but even inside of human-centered engagement, right? I think that approach, human-centered engagement, just works in this situation, right? So let's say we don't know what the factors are. We can have that conversation. We can listen, right? Maybe somebody was a high performer and they've been falling off, and we start to find that there's some personal problems in their life, right? They have a sick kid, right? Michelle and I have dealt with stuff with our kids, right? They're just that takes something out of you, right? I remember when my son Jacob had to have surgery. I couldn't give more than 60% because, and I would be, it was probably the most focused I ever was in my life, right? Like ADD it wasn't possible to have ADD at that time. Like I needed to focus because I couldn't be there all nights, all hours of the night. I couldn't be there over the weekend. I needed to be home. I needed to give my wife some reprieve. I needed to be there for my son. I needed to be there for me, right? So it changed things. But if somebody was relying on me to put in my normal, 60, 70 hours that week, and I wasn't doing it, right, and that didn't meet the performance level, but they had no connectivity to what I was dealing with in my personal life, it could have gotten contentious. It could have been, a situation of like, well, you need to perform because that's what we're expecting of you. That's what we pay you for, blah, 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 blah. And so if you don't do that, go find another job, which at that point I would be like, all right, well, I'm not going to quit, but you can fire me. I'll take the severance and I'll take the unemployment because my family is actually more important, which would have been the first time in my life I ever said that, right? So those things in the situation, right? If you start incorporating human-centered engagement, you might find out what that is, right? You might find out what's going on. You might find out that they don't understand the product, or there's something in the process that changed that they don't understand, or there's just some mental block that they have, right? That getting them over the hump, right? Let's say it's a new salesperson, right? And they just don't know how to win a sale. They don't understand. Maybe there's a relational thing in your company that they're just not getting. They're going through the steps, but they're not stopping to use human-centered engagement, right, to make a connection with their client. So there's all kinds of different things that could be the cause behind this. But the sad reality is most of the time, right, if that situation were to happen today, right, if I'm looking at, if all the people on my team at the end of the quarter hit their numbers, I get a bonus, and I've got somebody who's not hitting their numbers, maybe I fire them, right? Like that's kind of the sad reality of a lot of times what happens, right? And talking to other sales leaders, that's, it's like I have to make my numbers because if I don't make my numbers, my boss is going to look at me that way.
Yeah, flipping that around. So, Michelle, is it even possible? I mean, how do you deal with that if you are management, especially in sales, right? When you have to produce, right? And you're a sales manager, you're responsible for everyone, but you have, upper management who's throwing all types of things your way, right? And expecting you also, what they would say is babysit, right, for someone else. I mean, is that fair, or what? How do you look at that?
I find myself resistant to the premise of our question, only because I hate having money as the motivator, and I know that that's what businesses are built on. But there are businesses that have return for the stockholder at the bottom of the list of importance, and the value for customers and the value for employees is at the top of the list of what's important. And so I think you can sort of still be a business that provides value in a monetary way for stakeholders, not stockholders, stakeholders and stockholders and the employees, by thinking a little bit more long term, right? So, and I've never been in sales for this purpose. Like I would not be that good in sales. But just kind of thinking from a broader standpoint, from business management and just being in business. This is not my concept, but I think it's an indigenous concept of 7 generations thinking, right? So, what would be the right approach for this person that is struggling on my team, for me, for my business writ large? 7 generations from now, would it be to like cram this person into the hole that he's supposed to fill and just like beat him till he gets it done? That's a 0.1 generation thought. That's not really thinking long term. Who is this person? How are they really meant to show up in workplaces? We all have magic inside us, not to get too woo-woo. And it's about unlocking that. And I do feel like we each have a responsibility to do that for ourselves. But I mean, oh my God, I think about along the way so many pivotal relationships I've had with managers who helped me see, where I could go and how I could, unlock those things within myself. So I would say, maybe pushing this person so that I get my bonus and I keep my job is what's necessary for some other greater good. Maybe I don't know what it is. Maybe you're daughter can't get cancer surgery because you don't get your bonus. All right, well, maybe like there's some complex things to weigh, but let's just say nothing like that is in play. Right. I think that valuing the person, having all these conversations that you all just had, and him maybe not even, him or her not even making the numbers that's needed for me to have the bonus, I think that would be okay for me. And I'm a very competitive person. It's just that to me, this would be more important, understanding what's going on. And maybe this sets the person up to be amazing for the next challenge. If you, just like you were saying, like, let me understand really what's going on. I had someone that I managed where we were working on, something that was like a development opportunity for the way he was leading his teams. And I was feeling like he wasn't understanding what I was asking him to do, and we had all these conversations to make that clearer. And when I stepped back and just asked a different question, what I realized was he felt like he was doing what I was asking him to do. He felt like he was actually delivering on what the goal was. And then I said, oh, well, that's a completely different problem to solve here. Now I need to better, come along together with this person to make sure we're on the same page about what's even expected. So I just, and then that enabled him to grow and, really run off to the races because that fundamental disconnect we had was resolved. So I will stop there.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah.
When we talk about human-centered engagement, right? If we're not looking at the same challenge, right? That's one place where we can be disconnected, right? If the challenge I'm presenting you is different than the challenge that you want to tackle or that you perceive that I'm presenting, we have a disconnect. But I just really quick, I just want to touch on something Michelle said, like right in the beginning, right? When companies put their service first, when stakeholder profits are on the list, but they're not top on the list, I don't think we have this situation. I don't think they create a policy and a program in their sales department that limits bonuses based on one person not having a good quarter or a good month or a good year, right? And looking to nurture that person more, right? If you've made an investment in that person, if each employee is a stakeholder.
That's right.
If each customer is a stakeholder, if each stockholder is a stakeholder, right? How does that then change the dynamic?